Hello, hello, hello. Leslie Klein here with the Good Vibes Lifestyle live stream. Now, this happens every week at 3 o'clock Eastern Time on Thursdays, and this is meant to be a weekly, casual, but timely experience where you learn a tip about how to raise your vibration. Not as formal as my Good Vibes TV show, which is found on my YouTube channel, but this is all about the Good Vibes lifestyle, living in the Good Vibes zone. And if you've seen other episodes, you've seen how I refer to the Map of Consciousness by Dr. David R. Hawkins and Abraham Hicks' work on the emotional guidance scale. And if you're familiar with that, you'll know what I'm talking about. But I'm here to start a movement, a Good Vibes lifestyle movement where, we're all striving and living in the Good Vibes zone, in the zone of love, of peace, of enlightenment, of encouragement, of all the good stuff. So it's an exciting time, and I've got a really great live stream for you today. Today we're going to recap the press conference that Dr. Stephen Greer, who has been studying UFO extraterrestrials and the UFO phenomenon for the last 33 years. And I have clips. So I've distilled a 3-hour press conference down to about 48 minutes. So I'm going to make a little bit of commentary in between, but I want you to see the clips. I want you to hear the clips from the horse's mouth, from Dr. Greer's mouth, and from the other experts who were at the conference this past Monday. I was not able to attend the weekend conference, so there was a whole deep dive, and I think you probably could still get the videos for the conference. But the press conference on Monday was really a historical moment. But before we get into that, I want to ask, did you watch the last episode of Good Vibes TV? I interviewed Kristen Gieslin, who is a mindful seer. She's a medium that's also a Buddhist, and she has a whole philosophy called Beism, and that acronym Beism stands for 5 different areas of life. So she has a great system, and it's a wonderful episode. So if you haven't watched that, please watch that, and you can just go to good-vibes.tv, and it'll take you right to my YouTube channel. So, let's see. I like to try to astrologically let you know what's going on, and I'm not going to get into too much. But there is a new moon happening in the sign of Gemini, which will be this Sunday on June 18th at 12:37 a.m. Eastern Time. So new moons, new beginnings. We're winding up kind of the full moon or the waning moon energy, kind of wrapping things up, getting ready for the new cycle. So that's all that I'll say about that. And last week's tip was to consciously consume empowering and enlightening media. So did you do that? Did you watch Stephen Greer's press conference this past Monday? Did you watch any episodes of Good Vibes TV? And let me know in the comments, because you can comment, I can see it, and I'll put it on the screen if you would like me to. And this is meant to be a conversation, not just a one-way conversation, but 2 ways. So communicate with me by saying something in the comments, and I thank you for that. So the big push I had last week, it was to watch the movie The Lost Century, and I do have it on my Amazon store where you could purchase it, and I also put his other 3 documentaries that are free that you can watch on Amazon Prime. So and you can also go to drstephengreer.com, that website, or to Serious Disclosure. But what I do want to do right now is let me, I want to cue this up and introduce you to Dr. Stephen Greer. Now these, I'm going to take little clips, and there's anywhere from 7 to 10 minute long clips from the press conference, like I said, that lasted 3 hours. And I'll intersperse some commentary in between, recapping of the information. Let me ask you these questions before we get into it. Do you believe in UFOs? Do you believe in extraterrestrials? Are we alone in this great cosmic universe? What do you think? What do you believe? This is a This is a very historical moment, I'll say, in humanity. You know, we've got AI happening, so that's has the potential to quantum leap us. We're into the age of Aquarius, but we're transforming, and we have the opportunity with this information that Dr. Greer is going to share to change our world, and that's why this information is so important. And it's you'll see as I get started here. So let me introduce you to Dr. Stephen Greer. Here he's talking about this is the very beginning of the news conference, and he's talking about the last 18 months, what he's been up to, and how the Congress has been unmasking this whole UFO, UAP controversy. And here, let me take this off here and show you.
I've been asked to provide as much intelligence as I can to folks who have been working to get to the bottom of this since the Congress passed a law requiring the Director of National Intelligence to come forward with information to the extent that he had it. Now, one of the problems with that process is that, and I discovered this in 1993, in December 13th of that year, when I briefed the director of the CIA at the time, R. James Woolsey, for then President Clinton. He and the president had been waved off and not given information on this subject. That's when, as a young doctor, I realized that this was being run outside appropriate oversight and supervision by the office of the president and the Congress, and that is just a fact. So at that point, of course, it sort of upended my life in many ways, but we began to try to get information to the executive branch further, do research, provide whistleblower testimony, but it was all done very quietly. I then started providing information to folks in the Congress, such as Representative Dan Burton, who was chairman of the Government House Reform and Oversight Committee, Senator Dick Bryan, Nevada, ironically, home of Area 51, on the Senate Intelligence Committee, and many others. Those proceedings went forward as a volunteer effort, and all of this is still a volunteer effort. We are unfunded volunteers. The history of this is important because if you look at the testimony we have already, it's something like 70 to 80 people that we have debriefed, videotaped, have their transcripts, and it's available to the media and the public through our website and our YouTube channel. We've very transparently put out everything we can. To an extent, a not-for-profit entity can do it with volunteers and no office and no staff. So I don't want people to not get too grand here. This has been a volunteer effort for 33 years. All of these sort of testimonies and witnesses have come forward already. But now we're at the stage where there's real utility because the official law now is that the government has mandated the Pentagon, the intelligence community, to research this and report back to Congress. Now, there's a problem we'll get into in a moment with that whole process, which is important that you understand, and particularly the media understand. But first, I want to tell you what we've handed off this week to the Congress and to the White House and to the Pentagon AARO office, the AARO office that's tasked with investigating this. So we can go through the list of the material in the archive. It has government documents in the tens of thousands from all those countries: United States, Canada, Australia, Russia, Soviet Union, United Kingdom, and others. We have 145 top secret facilities, some of which are black sites, that are named and on a map, and you'll see them in a moment. The supporting documentation of it are in the archive, meaning the witnesses' testimony, who they were, when they were there, where the locations is, sometimes up to where the gate is. And that's been handed over to the United States government this week. There are 752 and counting whistleblowers who have come forward over the years. Some of them are now deceased. But what's important, even the ones who are deceased, if you go to their history and their command and what they provided, there is an investigative thread to follow back in. Very important. There are also files with all these witness testimonies that have been provided up to date. In the archive are 121. We learned of another one last night from a very high level whistleblower who is not ready to come forward. So there's actually 122 crash retrieval cases of these UAPs. And those are documented. Michael Schratt, who is an aerospace historian and is working full-time with us beginning in November, had worked for Lockheed, but not the Skunk Works, on conventional operations. And he is doing those investigations for us and also the beautiful illustrations of what these witnesses have had to share, and you will see those. Then we also have the documents that includes names of witnesses. In other words, government documents that are not declassified that we have. Now, we'll get into this in a minute. And there are many so-called deep throats who provide intel in the background who are working with us, some of whom are very senior in these operations. Others are people who have just incidentally been involved. And I want to go through this very quickly. This is just a scrolling list of the witness list. Each one of these witnesses has a file where they have either been interviewed or provide intelligence and corresponded with me, and that I have debriefed personally over the last 30 years. So you're going to see this goes on for about 100 named persons, and then it becomes a black list. It just has to be blacked out. Why? I'm not holding anything back except what I've been requested to by people whose confidence I have told them I will keep. So I'm a medical doctor. We understand patient, doctor confidentiality, like an attorney understands that. But until these guys want to be unmasked and come forward, we will not disclose their names, except the redacted list is something available to the media and to the public now. In addition to that, and it's very important, the unredacted list and the full files, including all my correspondence files, are in the unredacted archive. It's about, let's see, isn't it cool that you can put terabytes on something like this? This is all it is, but it's about a terabyte. We have about 8 terabytes of information. We're in the process of scanning it and trying to put it into a searchable database. This has been provided to the intelligence community, as I mentioned, the Pentagon, Congress, and the White House. It is also the redacted version would be available to the media if you can help us get it on a hard drive. We're really not funded properly, and each of these costs several $100s. So we gave out 1,000 of them. It's more than we've ever had. But nevertheless, it is an open archive. Eventually, we want to have it on an internet site. But the names that you're seeing now, you're going to see all their information is blacked out. And it's because they've asked not to be named. Now, they can be known by people who are working in a SCIF and have a vault, and who have the ability to then pursue it in the interest of national security. That has been provided to these key offices. So I just wanted to give you that as sort of an overview of how the list was constructed. It is by no means complete. We have a new whistleblower coming forward every week or two now at this point. And Michael Schratt's nodding his head. Yeah, this has become a torrent. And so we want to set up a mechanism. We're recommending that you'll hear what our recommendations are for the President and Congress to resolve this crisis.
So I want to recap what he just talked about. He just revealed that there are 145 secret bases or facilities that are housing these UFOs, these ARVs, which are the alien reproduction vehicles, which are vehicles that our government or the secret shadow government has created that is not under our constitutional government. And he'll get into more on that later. There's 752 plus witnesses testimony. And as you were seeing, he was scrolling through the names. He's got redacted and unredacted information here. He's created 8 terabytes worth of data they have. They're providing, they just did this past Monday, provided not only the government with this information, but media and different agencies so that they can study it. There's also, he mentioned, 122 UFO crash retrieval cases. So that means, you know, a UFO hit the ground, crashed. They don't, you know, it could have been from the scalar technology that he'll talk about in a minute that shot him down, that the that the ETs are not happy about, and or they might have just, you know, crashed and they retrieved. And some of those are, and that's the big story, some of these UFOs are man-made, and there's a whole reason this is happening. The other thing he mentioned, that there are about two new whistleblowers coming out every week. So that's why that 752 is growing. So this next section, he's going to talk more about the illegal operations. Listen in.
So I wanted to mention that these bases, if you look at them, let's go to, this is where all these illegal operations have happened. I'm saying illegal because we can prove that this information, as Senator Inouye said, you'll hear his statement in a moment, has been run by a very shadowy, deep black operation. And we're not talking the legal black budget of the United States. We're talking about projects that presidents and CI directors and secretaries of defense and members of the Congress who have a need to know and are cleared TSSCI and SCIFs, secure compartmented information facilities, have been blatantly either gaslit, denied access. That is the foundation of everything we've done, is that these projects are a priori illegal and therefore unconstitutional and have to be reined in, because not doing so is a threat to the national security. So here is your list. I'm not going to go through 145 sites. Some of them are black sites. Some of them are bases you know about, like Wright-Patterson, Edwards, Nellis, Area 51, so-called. But all of them are based on witness testimony and intelligence we've gathered over the last 30 years. And it's time for it to be disclosed. And so now you have it. Next. Here's one. And people go out in the Mojave Desert. Michael Schratt took this picture when it was okay to fly near it in a small private plane. It is the site for the Lockheed Range underground entrance. What's in there? Well, there are man-made, and this is the big story. No one's telling you. A large number of the UAPs are in fact deep black budget electrogravitic, electromagnetic field propulsion devices based on the study of extraterrestrial vehicles that began in the 1940s. That is a fact, and we can prove it. So when you see these sort of places, just remember, many of them, I want to be careful what I'm saying here. Someone who is in charge of the black budget in the United States in 2022 and went out to the Lockheed Skunk Works based on some information he had. He was shown a bunch of old jet aircraft. He knew he was being gaslit, and they reached out to me, and I said, what do you want? I'll give you everything we have. And that's what's happened over the last 16 months. So I cannot name this person, but they're a wonderful person of enormous integrity and a hero of our country. This object was retrieved because it became disabled. Some of these retrieval operations are not extraterrestrial, but they would like sometimes the public to think maybe it was, because the bigger secret, I'll tell you right now, is not the extraterrestrial issue. It's these technologies, which an unsupervised and frankly illegal operation have, which is a threat to the national security, period. This we will prove. And this is a bigger threat, the existence of these in the hands of unsupervised operations that have escaped the oversight of the President of the Office of the President and the Congress since 1956 to 1960. Hence Eisenhower's speech, beware the military-industrial complex. This is actually what he was talking about. I know people who have since passed away, like our witness, Stephen Lubkin, who was at the White House with Eisenhower, who said point blank, the president lost control of these projects and that he was very upset and angry about it, but these projects became so compartmentalized that he no longer could control them. So this is one. You can see there are rivets and what have you. It began to pulse and operate and came back to life, as it were. And the entire group that was there basically were put in some kind of a stasis electromagnetically. Sounds like science fiction, teleported back to the helipad instantly. But before that happened, he had this meeting with two of these extraterrestrial biological entities, a male and a female, and this is a very accurate, according to the whistleblower, who needs to come forward when there's adult protection. They had no pinna, the ears outside, and had no hair, and there was a male and a female, and it was made very clear to him by these beings that they were completely non-hostile. All extraterrestrial civilizations are non-hostile. If they were hostile, the technologies they have would have been made quite clear to us in August of 1945. We'll get to this in a moment.
So, in that segment, he was talking about the illegal operations. It's a shadow, deep, black operation that's outside of our constitutional government. They've gone rogue. This has been going on since the 1940s. Eisenhower lost control over these operations back, I guess, in the 50s. And but one of the points I did want to make is these extraterrestrials, as these two said in this particular account, that they're peaceful. They're not here to destroy us. Because if they wanted to, it would have already happened. They are so far ahead in technology than we are. And we're going to talk more about the technology because that's like the big secret that's being revealed here.
So here's what we need to go through very quickly. It's a lot to unpack. This is not intended to be, we just did a 2-day conference right next door. The media are welcome to get that entire event with all the details for you if you wish to have it or people get it to you. Basically, there are two types of these so-called UAPs, and I've said this. Some are extraterrestrial vehicles, ETVs, and some are ATs or ARVs, advanced reproduction vehicles or alien reproduction vehicles. People use different terms. The extraterrestrial groups are absolutely not hostile. However, screaming caps, they are increasingly concerned about human hostility and our weapon systems, which include nuclear and scalar, the so-called, Dr. Zahari shared this weekend, about what scalar electromagnetic fields are. But just to give you a sense of it, you all know what an electromagnetic pulse is. That's at the speed of light. The scalar systems are, instead of a wave, is a point that goes out longitudinally. Some call them longitudinal waves. These have been studied. Tesla talked about scalar systems. They have been weaponized, and those are the primary systems used to target and hit these electromagnetic field propulsion craft that cause them to fall like a rock out of the sky. You do not travel from another star system and cannot navigate a thunderstorm in New Mexico. That ain't going to happen. So even at that point, these had been early systems. We have a FBI memo from a field agent that we released. It's now one of the most watched, viewed documents on the FBI website of the fact that a field agent at after Roswell said to J. Edgar Hoover that a disk was downed because we had switched on a new radar system. So let me explain the euphemisms that are used in this field. Radar can track an aircraft by bouncing a wave off of the fuselage, but it also can have piggybacked an active system not to hit it. So you can have an active weapon system embedded in a radar system. So that's what began to be experimented with, and this is why from the mid-40s forward, there were a number of these downed objects that we've been able to document. If we've documented 122 of them, I suspect there have been multiple numbers of that. So what's very important about this, these technologies are unsanctioned. They are illegal operations, and this can be proven in any court of law, and we're about to launch a massive civilian RICO action, racketeer, influence, corrupt organization action against the corporations and the individuals involved. These technologies would immediately solve the world's energy, environmental, and poverty problems. Why? These are what people call, a senior executive with a big Fortune 100 company contacted us. They're called, some people say free energy, but they're zero-point and quantum vacuum energy systems, pulling energy out of, let's call it the fabric of space-time. These begin to be developed. Tesla knew about this, so I think Elon Musk doesn't have a Tesla, he has a Musk. A real Tesla would have to plug in. I'd have one little battery in it. But the point is that these technologies would have a huge revolutionary effect. Macroeconomically, there would be some losers, oil industry, public utilities, nuclear power, now wind, solar, surface roads eventually would be obsolete. So it's a very significant technological advance, and for near a century, they have all been withheld. We just released an educational documentary film you can all see called The Lost Century and How to Reclaim It. It's a 2-hour expose of this. I suggest everyone look at it if you have a chance tonight. So these organizations have also been targeting and successfully down to ET vehicles. The covert group has technologies to launch a convincing false flag operation detrimental to the national security. This was the chief topic of my briefing for 3-star General Patrick Hughes at the Pentagon during the Clinton years, because he was not read into this. There were some events that had happened where you could trigger a world war because your top folks in the Congress, the White House, the Pentagon, and CIA, many of them, if they're not part of this covert group, this deep black group illegally, they have no idea what's going on because of the nature of TSSCI, the hyper-compartmentalization that happened in the 50s. So these actions really are a threat to world security and national security, and they have to be reined in immediately. I want to use my words carefully here. A clock, I understand, has been put on this getting resolved through hearings and other means, and by the end of this year, it needs to be resolved. And that's all I will say at this point. So these actions really are dangerous. They are crimes against humans worldwide. We're going to get into that. And some of these crimes need to be referred to the International Court. Some of them involve, as you'll hear from our attorney, crimes against humanity. We applaud the current actions of the Congress and the President to sign the bill to get to the bottom of this. They have very courageously stepped forward. We're trying to get them everything they would need to know. And I will tell you, the Disclosure Project Intelligence Archive literally has everything they would need to know to get to the absolute end of this. It's been handed to them. So the chief characteristics of this illegal secret government called ISG projects, the CIA folks and Pentagon people and most of the people in the government are victims of this. They're not culpable. When people say, why is the government hiding all this? Well, the government is very complex and it's highly compartmentalized. These operations have been run by a clandestine, unsanctioned group. And therefore, our military and our intelligence community and our political leaders are, in fact, victims of this secrecy. I want to refer very briefly to one of the very first CIA director, Admiral Roscoe Hillenkoetter, who in 1961 wrote to the New York Times and said, the secrecy around UFOs is a threat to the national security, not the UFOs. So what has happened is it's all been turned on its head, where they're trying to say, UAPs are a threat. Well, the man-made ones are. The extraterrestrial ones aren't. This has to be made crystal clear to the American people so we don't stumble into an absolute disaster of epic proportions. So these operations I'm referring to in the United States, we have parallel projects in Australia at Pine Gap. There are projects in the United Kingdom. These are all very sub rosa, off the radar. I have done briefings for the Minister of Defenses of Australia, Canada, and Great Britain. None of them were read into these projects, and yet we had evidence they were ongoing. So they also act without acknowledging any national boundaries. What do I mean by that? So we have an operational facilities in other countries that we move in and out of with alacrity, without any knowledge or approval of that government. So this is also not good, obviously, and dangerous. But because of the nature of our operations, which can be cloaked, that have these AT or ARV vehicles, they can move off radar, they can go in and out of areas, and we have witnesses who can prove what I just said. Blackmail, bribery, and intimidation is the stock and trade, and it's the operational core of this illegal secret government program. Many of our whistleblowers have been threatened and have been blackmailed, and in the case of some of us, attempts at bribery, including myself.
So, are you able to wrap your head around this? It's pretty out there. I've been following Dr. Greer for probably since '93, so this is not new information for me. But I'm wondering, how are you handling it? Please comment. I still have more, but in this snippet, I think the main points are: number one, not all UFOs are extraterrestrial. A majority of them are ARVs, which is alien reproduction vehicles, meaning the government or the shadow government or these forces that he's talking about have reverse engineered the ET technology, and they're actually using it to shoot down ETs, and the ETs are not happy about this. So, you know, there's a deadline. He's talking about the government with the AARO hearing committee. I think that Marco Rubio is part of that. And, you know, so things are getting uncovered. But the main thing is Dr. Greer with these 8 terabyte of data of 752 witnesses, 145 bases, all this information he's giving to the government so they can go ahead with their hearings and take the actions that they need to take. Let's watch some more.
So these are the actions we recommend immediately, now that this is all coming out by the Congress and the government. Next. And I want to remind everyone who's in office, and all military know this, I do solemnly swear to affirm that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic, that I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same, that I take this obligation freely without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion, and that I will well and faithfully discharge the duties of the office on which I am about to enter, so help me God. Next. So this is quite a list. I want to go through it very quickly. These have been conveyed over to the government in various offices. This investigation of the UAP issue, and based on the intelligence archive, should happen immediately and be increased in its pace and scope. The presidential executive order needs to occur immediately to stand down all targeting of these extraterrestrial vehicles by these covert projects, because it is dangerous and it is an existential threat to security for the entire world, not just our country. The executive order requiring all military intelligence contractors and other agencies of the U.S. government to disclose to Congress and White House all information, materiel, and technologies and locations and related assets. If not complied with, within around 6 months, we think that the offending party should be prosecuted criminally for treason and other crimes against the United States. The executive order we need an executive order where the State Department and Pentagon coordinate a global diplomatic as opposed to military response to these extraterrestrial civilizations. Should have happened. Barry Goldwater, Senator Goldwater, told me it was a, excuse my language, goddamn mistake then and goddamn mistake now that this was ever kept secret like this. He was not allowed in this project. When he tried to get in, General Curtis LeMay told him he could never ask him about it again. We have that whole trail with former Senator Goldwater. So we also need to have an executive order so that the U.S. Patent Office that has seized these zero-point and related technologies under bogus application of the national security laws, and we have a copy of an inventor had one of these happen to him. Those have to be reversed, those patents have to be released, and inventors and scientists around the world that have come across these. Look, the laws of the universe are universal, and they've been discovered by folks. They get grabbed, they are either put on a black shelf, or they get this national security order slapped on them. Those have to be reversed, and those should be released open source to the public. We also need an executive order to immediately require that the U.S. Space Force and Pentagon coordinate assets with the State Department, the United Nations, and other governments to initiate further open communication with these civilizations. The Space Force could be very useful in this regard if it's deployed properly. All of the military would be very important. And I want to emphasize, both the people who work in most of these corporations and in these agencies and the Pentagon have no knowledge, excuse me, of these illegal operations. And we should not paint them all with the brush of being culpable. It's not. These are the rogue elements. An executive order to immediately disclose advanced energy generating technologies should happen. These are held by some of these corporations and agencies. This would, within 10 to 20 years, end all pollution on Earth and all global poverty. This is not a pipe dream. Those technologies are extant. They have been around for a while, and we need them, and we need them 60 years ago, 70 years ago. So the reason I'm going through these is that there's a specific action plan that we have. You can read these. They'll be in the press briefing materials if you need them. And I think it needs to happen very quickly, because this is all going to come out, and there needs to be an organized response. Next. The congressional recommendations: Congress should immediately pass a $50 billion research bill to develop and bring forward the safe technologies related to zero-point and quantum vacuum energy systems. We provided 50-some billion for the chip industry. This is way more important. And frankly, it needs to come out very, very soon, given what we're facing with the climate and global poverty issues. That's something that needs to be put on the front burner. It is certainly a more important agenda than the partisan bickering that we see today. Amnesty provisions need to be passed explicitly for people wanting to come forward. I have a major number of folks who are executives, corporate, also whistleblowers, some of whom have been involved in activities that are not legal. If they come forward, they should have immunity so that this can all be unwound in a orderly and peaceful way. That needs to happen very quickly, and it should be included in a bill this year. The Congress should also convene open hearings on this. I understand from discussions with a member of the House Government Reform and Oversight Committee that this has been discussed by the chairman and the Speaker of the House. I think that should be put on the front burner and move forward very quickly. We will provide all information, and have already provided all information they will need. There are, I'm sure, other archives that can be brought to bear, and other whistleblowers are now going to be coming forward, probably several a week at this point. Congress should also pass legislation to explicitly protect the personal safety, like a witness protection program. It is not an exaggeration to say that in the 30-some years I've been dealing with this, I have dealt with multiple people who have been flat out threatened with execution. One of them is sitting here at this table, perhaps more.
So
One
yeah,
of the things I just want to mention is the Lost Century.
Just to pause there for a minute. So he's making recommendations to the White House for the White House to immediately stand down any targeting of ETs. Also that there be immediate disclosure by the military, that the Space Force, United Nations, and other agencies come together and start working on some ET diplomacy. That there be a release of patents for this free energy, advanced technology, because this technology, he's saying 10 to 20 years, will end pollution, will end poverty in the world. And that's like the key thing to remember. The whole reason this what's happening is important is that we've lost a century of technology because these rogue agents have, or corporations have, greedy, right, hidden them because they want to support the oil petroleum industry. The dirty coal, all of the old energies that are obsolete and dirty and have ruined our planet. So this is why this information is so important. And he wants the technology to be open sourced to the public so that businesses and everybody can have access to it. Just like how AI has opened up a whole, new line of work for people and new possibilities of productivity. Imagine having a little box that powers your house, everything. You don't need power lines. You don't need coal plants. You don't need nuclear plants. You're self-contained, and they don't want that. They don't want us to be empowered like that. So those were some of the recommendations to the White House. And the recommendations he gave to the Congress is number one, a $50 billion research bill to investigate zero-point energy. Also, amnesty for the next 6 to 12 months for all the whistleblowers coming forward, because some of these people did things that were wrong, but we're going to give them amnesty so they can come forward. But for the ones that refuse to come forward, the book will be thrown at them. So, but we're giving them that period of time to make good on it. He wants open hearings to the Congress, and I believe the AARO is starting to do that. And let's see, they also want to pass legislation to protect the whistleblowers because they have been, they're persecuted, really. So let's keep going.
Was crowdfunded, and look at the subtitle, How to Reclaim It. Because there's a century of technological and scientific progress that would greatly benefit all of humanity, not just the United States. We all live on this beautiful sphere floating through space together. It needs to very much come forward. It's 100 years is long enough for secrecy. This, I want to just play this for a moment. We're in Washington. Here's an esteemed senator from Hawaii, and listen to what he said in the 1980s.
A shadowy government with its own Air Force, its own Navy, its own fundraising mechanism, and the ability to pursue its own ideas of the national interest, free from all checks and balances, and free from the law itself.
Free from all checks and balances and free from the law itself. Now, the media often wants to portray this issue, conspiracy people, and of course, at this point, if you disagree with someone anywhere, you just call them a conspiracy theorist, okay? This man knew what he was talking about. So he absolutely knew what was going on with this. He was denied access, not just on the Iran-Contra issue, but on this specific issue. And how do we know that? We have an attorney, Derek Garcia, here. He is now heading up the Disclosure Project Legal Defense Fund, and we have, as of about 2 hours ago, 90+ attorneys and legal professionals to represent Disclosure Project witnesses and to pursue racketeering, influence, corrupt organization lawsuits against various corporations and individuals that are liable. The United States Congress and President need to act, but we will act pending their action. I'd like to then welcome Derek Garcia to the podium.
Good afternoon. My name is Derek Garcia. I'm a civil rights attorney from New Mexico. I've been in practice for 13 years. I'm admitted to practice in the District of New Mexico, the Federal District, the United States Court of Appeals for the 10th Circuit, as well as the U.S. Supreme Court. I'm joined in the audience by my colleague and attorney, Paige Fox from Illinois, and numerous attorneys who have now joined our legal team nationwide and internationally. We are dedicated to ending decades of UFO secrecy and releasing vital technologies which will bring an end to our current environmental and energy crisis. On May 23rd, we announced the creation of the Disclosure Project legal team over Dr. Greer's YouTube channel. Since our initial announcement, we now have over 90 legally affiliated individuals, different practice areas and expertise, paralegals, law students, law clerks, members of law enforcement, and criminal investigators, legal professionals from over 23 states and nearly all relevant jurisdictions, and a growing list of preeminent attorneys internationally. We continue to make the call for pro bono attorneys, all volunteer at this point, and legal professionals, and add new members of the Disclosure Project legal team on an hourly basis. We have assembled a one-of-a-kind and strictly non-partisan volunteer legal team for the purpose of moving disclosure forward once and for all. Our goals are to legitimize the essentially TAFOs and promote public awareness as to the numerous related constitutional and legal implications on this issue. We wish to support the constitutional government in regaining full operational control over these secret, illegal, black budget, beyond black budget projects. And we will gain control over this issue for the first time since President Eisenhower. We will seek truth about propulsion and advanced energy technologies capable of solving world hunger, poverty, and the energy crisis. We will seek justice for those who have been harmed by non-disclosure and technology seizure through filing civil RICO actions, Bivens claims, and numerous and multiple legal theories aimed at getting to the ultimate truth on this issue. The competent, under oath testimony already developed by the Disclosure Project team, Dr. Greer, and these courageous witnesses, and represented in the Disclosure Project intelligence archives developed over 30 years of Dr. Greer's work, may also be used in criminal prosecutions by United States attorneys or criminal prosecutors across the globe to seek indictments on the numerous RICO crimes which have been committed on this issue, with the aim of keeping the issue buried. Just a small sample, and I know we're short for time, of the crimes that are directly related to this issue. Disclosure Project witnesses have and gathered intelligence has established the following major crimes: treason against the United States of America, murder, mass murder, torture, kidnapping and abduction, embezzlement of government funds, embezzlement of private funds, bank fraud, money laundering, illegal surveillance, insubordination and insurrection against the United States, false imprisonment, witness and whistleblower intimidation, theft of intellectual property, trespassing, burglary, framing of innocent people, government corruption, blackmail, bribery, and illegal use of the government and military property, and many, many more crimes. We hope to support the civilian government, criminal prosecutors. Any evidence that we develop and continue to develop can be used for that purpose. My personal experience in coming to this issue was as a young intern for Senators Bingaman and Domenici in the summer of 2001 on Capitol Hill in Washington, D.C. The Disclosure Project press conference had just taken place on May 9th of 2001. During my internship, I distributed numerous copies of the Disclosure Project executive summary and briefing document and other written materials to various members of Congress and their staff, including direct submissions to leading members of the Senate in the underground subway system. Waiting in the hallway of the Hart Senate office building, I encountered a hero of our country, Senator Daniel Inouye, walking back from his office. I gave the senator a copy of the Disclosure Project executive summary and asked him if he had heard about the Disclosure Project and what he thought of UFOs, extraterrestrial intelligence, and the possibility of these intelligences actually visiting Earth. Senator Inouye responded by hand signaling me to follow him back to his private office. He shut the door of his private office. Senator Inouye said he dealt with the UFO issue extensively while he was chairman of the Senate Intelligence Committee in 1976. Senator Inouye confirmed that he had seen the May 9th, 2001 Disclosure Project press conference here at the National Press Club, and that the testimony provided by those courageous witnesses at the time was substantially accurate and correct, based on his direct experience and briefings on this subject. Senator Inouye confirmed that many UFOs and projects related to such represented genuine extraterrestrial vehicles, and that this issue, as portrayed by Dr. Stephen Greer and the 2001 Disclosure Project witnesses, was real, genuine, and absolutely not a hoax. I asked Senator Inouye if it was true that a secret, unacknowledged entity or control group operating illegally inside the United States government, internationally, and/or within the private sector among defense contractors and corporations had direct operational control of the UFO ETV issue. Senator Inouye confirmed his statement that there exists a shadowy government with its own Air Force, its own Navy, its own fundraising mechanism, and the ability to pursue its own ideas of the national interest, free from all checks and balances and free from the law itself, as stated during the Iran-Contra hearings in 1987. I asked whether he was exaggerating when he made this statement. I asked if perhaps he was speaking of another government. I asked many questions that day, but he looked to me and he told me directly that he was not exaggerating, that the illegal shadow government did exist at the time he made his statement in 1987 and continued to exist in 2001 during our conversation, and that the entity had thus far escaped complete scrutiny, control, and oversight by the legally authorized and constitutional government of the United States.
So in this last section, Derek Garcia is the lead attorney for the pro bono group, and he only they asked for these attorneys maybe a few weeks ago, and they have over 90 attorneys and other legal people that are volunteering. So if you are a lawyer, a retired lawyer, and if you have any experience in RICO or any, they have a whole list of like what kind of expertise they need. Reach out to drstephengreer.com and volunteer your services, because this is, this is so important. This is can change, or will change the world one way or another. Whether we get access to this technology and use it to renew our world, or we're done. So this is like super, super important. All right, let's continue watching. We're almost done.
But there is a history of hearings on this subject going back many decades. We have Blue Book, Robertson Report, the Gerald Ford hearings, the Condon Report, and et cetera. These have all been, unfortunately, submarined and corrupted by influences that have prevented the truth of this coming out. We have to be very careful, because Eisenhower said only an informed citizenry can prevent the loss of our freedoms and democracy. I would like to acknowledge how important, let's go through these signatures, the 16 members next of the Senate who have written for the Pentagon to pick up its pace and further fund the investigations. But they have to have watchdog external folks looking at that. That's what the Disclosure Project has to do. The also chairs and co-chair of the Senate Intelligence Committee have written to Arrow with concerns about the feedback. There are people I know who have been through the Arrow office and the SCIF, and they have contacted me explicitly saying that some of their information is not getting back to the members properly. This cannot happen. The Congress has passed a law. The Pentagon and this office must comply, and the people of the United States must insist that they comply with the law that has been passed. Next. We won't have time to go into this in depth. I just want to mention, I want to be extremely careful what I'm about to say, because it will be misconstrued by various folks out there. There are civilizations extremely advanced that are concerned with what we're doing. This station at the South Pole is a much later version of a man that I worked with for a number of years in the 90s who invented the neutrino light detector system on the satellites up in space. He knew then that these were being used, and this was in the 70s, to track, target, and destroy extraterrestrial assets in space and also around the Earth. Now, these civilizations, given their extremely advanced state, had they wished to punch back, they would have. However, they are inordinately peaceful, they are organized in a group, and we need to come forward as a people instead of looking at everything as a military threat and see that there's an opportunity here, and there has to be diplomacy and science and disclosure of the truth in order to avoid a catastrophe. My understanding is the technologies that are in these covert programs have become so advanced that at some point they could be a threat to these other worlds. As such, it puts our entire planet at risk because of the unchecked power and technology of the illegal secret government projects. This is a much graver national security threat than China, Russia, Iran, or anything the news media is currently covering. Next. I want to give you a call to action. All of you listening, the citizens of the world, not just the United States. If you know someone who is a government contractor, a government employee, military, what have you, who has information on this, please have them contact us at this email address. Please write your members of Congress. We live in a democracy still. You should write to your 2 senators and your representative and the President of the United States, expressing your concern and calling for open hearings. We need to network with our friends and families and get them to support this effort. You need, if you can, to contribute to our effort. I'm retired as a doctor, so, I can't fund everything at this point like I had. If you can assist with the Energy Research Lab that we are proposing in the Lost Century, you'll see that, then please contact us. We have a $50 million funding need to stand up a open source energy lab. What does that mean? We would develop these zero-point energy technologies, and they would be released free of charge, open source, to the entire world, so we can quickly solve the environmental and poverty problems we are facing. Our goal is to acquire or develop a zero-point quantum vacuum system no later than 2026. That's very fast. So we need your help. If you're a scientist who knows these technologies or in other capacities can help us, hoping we get funding, we will call on you to be part of this multi-centered lab. In other words, we would have this lab streamed continuously. All breakthroughs would be blockchain distributed in real time, and there would be other affiliated labs around the world working on this, so it could not be invaded and shut down in one place. And in wrapping up, I'd like to share something that I learned from Colonel Philip Corso prior to his death, when I was involved, and he came forward, as you all know, wrote the day after Roswell. He had been involved in some of the technology transfer, and he had an experience out at the White Sands missile range back in the 50s. Pretty sure it was 1956, but I don't want to be, don't quote me on that. And he was a colonel. He was involved in these projects. There was an ET craft that came in daytime and came down over the range. He went out there with a couple of his guys. And this craft, it would be three-dimensional and then vanish like a heat wave, like Stephen Digna explained, and then back again. Finally, it stayed. There was an ET that emerged, extraterrestrial biological entity, and he said, the ET was communicating, please don't hit us with these radar. Can you get these radar systems out? And was asking, because they were operational, of course, at that time, they were operational at Roswell. And being a brash young, Air Force colonel, and he says, "What's in it for me?" And the ET says, "A new world if you can take it." Now, I was one. Now, I have 12 grandchildren. What kind of world are we going to leave them if we don't fix this problem? Because it involves peace, and we have to work towards contact that is in a peaceful paradigm. We have launched a very controversial project, as I get attacked the most for, the CE5, or Close Encounter of the Fifth Kind contact program, as sort of an experimental, community-based outreach to these civilizations. We have had a number of extraordinary contact experiences. This is sort of a prototype that the French government during the presidency of Sarkozy asked us to demonstrate, and we set up an operation in France that was protected, where we did have events take place. I think we have to begin to ask, what can we do as a civilian government where we don't try to militarize and weaponize everything we don't understand? Because here's the problem. If you're a hammer, the whole world's a nail. And so we have to get this disclosed properly so that our brighter scientists, our academics, our political leadership, and our diplomats and the citizens can take the lead on this issue rather than an illegal and clandestine operation that is a threat to national and world security.
Well, what did you think of that? Was your mind blown? I know mine is. I'm still wrapping my head around this. And like I said, I've been following Dr. Greer for since 1993. So I've been aware of a lot of this. But what's new is this idea that these rogue shadow government figures have taken this alien, or as he likes ET, extraterrestrial technology, this free energy, 0-point energy technology that can change our world. They're weaponizing it. So it's up to us, power to the people. Our government, our country is supposed to be based on the people, government for, by the people, right? So what can we do? And that's why this week's tip is to take inspired action. And so I know this was a little long for a live stream. I usually don't go past an hour, but this information is important. And I want you to take inspired action. And what that inspired action is to write your Congress people. And so I'm going to give you the websites. I've already emailed my Congress people, and you can go to, I'll put it in the comments. There's a link to a template of an email that can be sent. It is talking about this past Monday's event, but you can work with it and send it. I just kind of copied and pasted because I emailed my people, my Congress people, and I did get I got them, they have the automatic response that you get, but Marco Rubio, since he's on that Arrow team and he's one of the senators of Florida, he did write back. And so it is really important, and they are looking at it. So go to congress.gov, put in your address or your zip code, and you will find out who your Congress people are. You've got a representative, and you have 2 senators from whatever state you're in. The other thing that Dr. Greer wants us to do is to write the White House. And you can go to whitehouse.gov and just send an email to them. And again, copy and paste the template that I will put in the comments after this live stream is done. So the other thing you can do is share this information out, whether you share this particular Good Vibes live stream or Dr. Greer's email, whatever information that you find, go watch the full 3-hour press conference. I cut out there were like 6 different witnesses that had that shared their testimony. And it's just too much. I was able to get 3 hours down into 48 minutes to get you what I got today. And I tried to get the highlights of what's important. But share this information out. This is so important. And, the other thing you can do is watch the movie, The Lost Century by Dr. Greer. I also have that, that's on my Amazon, my Amazon store. I have the movie there. You can go to good-vibes.tv or leslieklein.com and go to my Amazon store, and there you will find the link to the movie and, some of his other movies that he's done in the past. Let's see. So, what did you think of this? I'd love to know. Let's see, I've got a comment here. Oh, Carolyn. Hi, Carolyn. Wow, I came in late, but there's a rerun. Yes, this will, as soon as it's finished, as soon as I'm done with this live stream, it'll save to whatever platform. I'm on Facebook, I'm on YouTube, Twitter, and LinkedIn. And this broadcast will be on there. Also, it'll be on my YouTube podcast, Good Vibes Lifestyle live stream. So, yes, you can watch the whole thing and share it with other people. This is so important. We need, and I've been part of situations where the community got together to make a change in the community. One of the recent ones was there was a storage unit that wanted to be put in our neighborhood, and it was not zoned for that. So we got like 1,000 people in the community to get involved in the government and not, prevent that from happening. And we were able to do that. Another time that I've helped with, I would say, activism was when in Florida we were wanting an amendment on to vote for medical cannabis in Florida, and that was in 2014. So signing petitions and that we were able to get that passed. So now we're talking about a national level, really even global, but at least nationally, with our government to support them, encourage them, push them to get accountability, get a hold of these technologies, and open source them and change our world. This is all we're asking for, right? It's not a huge ask, I don't think. We are creators of reality, and taking these actions by writing your Congress people, writing the White House, emailing them. If you're a scientist and know any of this free energy, contact Dr. Greer. He's trying to gather all that information up and make it available, and he's there to help inventors. He's also what was he asking for? My notes. He was talking about the ET red line, and basically there were two clocks. I think the one clock he's talking about is the government clock of the 6 to 12 months and this arrow thing. But I think there's also an ET that I think the ETs has kind of given Greer or some of these people a deadline or get your stuff together or else kind of deal. And again, I don't believe these ETs are out to get us like they have been portrayed. That's been a whole, psychological operation that the military or these rogue government black op people have been trying to put out there for propaganda. That's why all the movies and all the things about these grays and what Dr. Greer just said, a lot of these, cow mutilations and abductions and tortures of people were not the ETs. They were our government or the shadow government that have these technologies, and they're wanting to create this false flag operation, to gain power over the world. So, here's a call to action. Write your Congress people, write the White House, and let me know in the comments if you did it. I did it already, and I feel good. Taking action empowers you. So let's take action collectively and change the world. Now, this weekend, the next episode of Good Vibes TV drops on noon this Sunday on June 18th, which is also a new moon. And I interview Teresa Cundiff with the Teresa Talks, which is a talk show that she hosts where she features authors, both published and unpublished. And she's a very positive, optimistic person, and you'll enjoy that episode. So again, I want to thank you for watching today. I know it was a long one, and I appreciate you coming and checking it out. And, if you came in late, just watch the replay. These live streams happen every week on Thursdays, and it's a lot shorter, but this is so important to get this information out that Dr. Greer has put together, and also the call to actions. So please, please, please get involved. The tiny, first get the knowledge. Secondly, take action. Write our government, get them to get on this because it's important. All right. Well, thank you for watching, everyone. Please write in the comments, tell me how you're doing and what you think of this. And remember to raise your vibe so you can thrive. Peace out, everyone.